Want to welcome everyone to this meeting, this general body meeting of NABJ-RDU. My name is Deborah Holt-Noel. I'm the treasurer, and it looks like our president is online, but I'm not sure if she'll be able to stay. Marie, are you actually here?
I'm here. I'm just listening in. Just so you all know, I'm still processing some of the things that have happened to two of our journalists within Spectrum News. So just taking a step back to reflect and process. I want to thank each and every one of you for your support during this time. And I want y'all to have a fantastic meeting. And I had to take part just to listen in because I know it's a wealth of knowledge from our panelists. So thank you all to everyone for attending.
Thanks, Marie. Our thoughts are also with the journalist who was killed in a recent incident. Details are in our group me. I think we have a link there, and just appreciate you being here, Marie. Let's go ahead and get started with our meeting. I turn this over to Camille Cower, who is our Vice President of Digital and Print. Camille.
Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you again, Deborah, for all of your help with us today as well. And for all the NABJ members that helped put this all together today. Thank you so much. And Marie, again, our hearts go out to the entire Spectrum team. But today we're focusing on Black press, the ideas, history, and the future. And we have these wonderful speakers with us today. So I'm just going to do a very quick overview, just in case they are new to you, which they should not be, but just in case, we won't put anybody out on the spot. So first off, we have Dr. Trevy, who Trevy A. McDonald, says her greatest passion in life purpose is to use her God-given gifts and talents to uplift, inspire, and empower people in entertaining and informative ways, which she truly does at UNC's Hussman School of Journalism. Trevy earned her BA in radio, TV, film from the University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh, and is one of the 16 out of 200 to receive an Outstanding Young Alumni Award and the Distinguished Alumni Award. She received her MA in radio, television, and motion pictures, and a PhD in mass communication research from the University of North Carolina. She was only 25 years old when she earned her PhD last week at the top journalism school in the country, also the first African-American woman to be tenured at that same university. She currently serves as the school's first Associate Dean of ABIDE, which stands for Access, Belonging, Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity. Welcome, Trevy. She also owns the Riomi, I hope I'm not butchering that, Publishing, a successful independent book publishing and consulting company based in Durham, North Carolina. And she is the author of 2 novels, co-editor of 2 scholarly anthologies, and has contributed to numerous publications. Welcome, Trevy. And then our other special guest today is Cary Wheelous. Cary Wheelous is the founder and CEO of HeyTie, the app. It's the largest Black-owned app that aggregates digital content from newspapers, magazines, videos, and podcasts from the Black publishers around the world. Cary developed the concept of HeyTie and recognized the lack of focus geared towards delivering content from Black publishers to diverse mobile users. Cary is also the co-founder of College Health TV, which is the nation's leading and most trusted streaming service, providing health and wellness program for college students at college and universities in the U.S. The streaming service is played at over 200 universities, giving national advertisers direct access and branding capabilities to reach college students and elevate their brand, motivate lifestyle change, and encourage compliance for better health. Before becoming a tech and entrepreneur, Mr. Wheelous maintained several roles in the banking and financial industry. His last corporate position was with Deutsche Bank as a project manager and assistant vice president with the private wealth management division. So he knows how to help us get that money. In this capacity, he was responsible for managing the banking operations team and developing innovative solutions to streamline transactions processing to ensure operational effectiveness and excellence of the business unit. Welcome very much, Cary Wheelous. And then next we have Cash Michaels. Cash Michaels is an award-winning journalist, filmmaker, and broadcaster. He currently writes and reports weekly for 5 African-American newspapers across North Carolina. Michaels has also produced several social justice films through his Cashworks HD Productions right here in Cary, North Carolina, including Al, My Brother, which was donated to the Civil Rights Movement Archive, Obama in North Carolina, The Path to History, and Pardons of Innocence, The Wilmington 10. Michaels also has produced a short film honoring the legacy of Mary Alice Trevy Thatch, the late publisher of the Wilmington Journal, who led the Wilmington 10 Pardons of Innocence and investigation, which debuted at the 22nd Annual African American Culture Celebration at the North Carolina Museum of History on January 28th. But don't worry if you missed that. He has another opportunity for us and a feature-length film about a church and Black family history titled Lincoln Park Holiness Church, From the Sin of Slavery to the Winning Souls for Christ, which will premiere tomorrow, February 26th at 11 a.m. at Lincoln Park Holiness Church. Michaels is a Brooklyn native, is married to his wife of 20 years, Marquita, hope I'm not butchering her name, and they have 2 beautiful, wonderful daughters, Kayla, now second-year student at Yale University, and the oldest, Tiffany, is alumni with an MBA from the University of Maryland at College Park. Welcome, Cash Michaels. Thank you all for joining us today. So we had some pre-made questions up, and so I'm just going to go with those first, and we'll just kind of go from question to question. So first off is, what is the history of Black press in North Carolina?
I teach a course on the Black press in U.S. history at UNC. I've been teaching it for about 10 years, and I think it's very important to start out by talking about the very first Black newspaper, which was Freedom's Journal. It was established in 1827. At the time, of course, this was during slavery, and a lot of the coverage of African Americans was very, very negative. There was a newspaper editor in New York, Mordecai Noah, who, among other editors, wrote some of the most atrocious and egregious things about African Americans. So Russ Werman Cornish in 1827 started Freedom's Journal because their goal was to, actually in a letter to their readers, they said, we wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. Too long has the public been deceived by misrepresentations and things that concern us dearly. With regards to the Black press in North Carolina, of course, it started in the 19th century. And I think the longest running Black newspaper is actually an arm of I believe it's the AME Zion Church, and is published out of Charlotte. But I think initially the Black press had very much an advocacy role in terms of abolishing slavery. And then it continued to advocate for things like anti-lynching, and then eventually migration to places outside of the South.
Hey, Cary, did you want to add any to that, or do you want me to skip on to Cash? Would you unmute?
Sorry about that. I was going to say, to skip on to Cash, I don't have I'm going to leave it to the experts in terms of documenting the history of the Black press. But I'll just add that the Black press, for me, historically, has been important. I mean, I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York, born and raised. There was a time when I actually had access to New York's daily newspaper, the Daily Challenge. That's no longer in existence. There was a time when I actually used to, every single week, pick up the Amsterdam News. Very familiar with the Black press and other newspapers. And so it's always been a part of my life. I've always been basically one who basically sought out their information. I wanted to read their articles. I wanted to know what was going on in our community. And so it was really, really important for me always, but, to have the access to that information. But the historical side actually also interests me as well. I knew about, the Freedom Journal paper and other papers that existed. And, over time, digitally or, with technology, I've seen the sort of, unfortunately, I haven't seen the progression of those papers. And, at some point in time, I said I wanted to be able to do something about it. And we'll get into that, I guess, a little bit further. But like I said, the history or the history of the Black press has always been, on my mind. And now, finally, I have the opportunity to be able to do something about assisting them in this new digital area that we're in today.
History of the Black press, I always refer to the Daily Record, which was the only daily African-American newspaper published in the United States, going back to the late 1890s, published by Alex Manley. That the Daily Record was located in Wilmington, North Carolina. And in November of 1898, was destroyed by a white supremacist mob in Wilmington, primarily because it spoke truth to power. And that destruction, that legacy, in my mind, has helped to shape Black newspapers in North Carolina ever since. I'm part of an effort right now, as a matter of fact, to help save and restore the Wilmington Journal because of the death of Mary Alice Gervais Thatch, who died in December of 2021, or 2021 or 22, excuse me, I'm sorry. No, 21. She died in 21. And in my mind, because I make my living from the Black press, make no mistake about it, writing for the Carolina Peacemaker in Greensboro, writing for the Urban News in Asheville, writing for the County News in Mecklenburg County, writing for the Fayetteville Press, writing for the Carolina Call it's here, don't worry, just trust me, it's here in North Carolina. And but writing for these papers, and also still writing for the Wilmington Journal, which is still publishing, but in a reduced capacity. It is extremely important, as far as I'm concerned, through my many years of involvement, that the African American have and support, that's the most important thing, its own institutions as it relates to information. We need our own perspective. We need our side of the story. We need to be able to inform our people as to what's at stake. I could only imagine what the Black papers in the state of Florida are going through right now with the governor that they have there attacking African American studies, advanced African American studies there, and how he, and apparently it would seem that other Republican politicians, because we had folks here just once again reintroduce their anti-critical race theory bill this week to in effect make talking about Black history something that is illegal. Now they'll tell you, no, that's not what they're doing, but that's exactly what they're doing. They want to try to keep our young people in particular, and when I say our young people, not just Black young people, but all young people, deaf, dumb, and blind as to the history of this nation. Our young people are hungry to know the truth about the story of America. And if you do not tell the full story, the full racial story of this nation, then you are not telling the story of America. One of the reasons why America continues to be divided the way it is because we have refused and continue to refuse to have the discussion about race, the full-throated discussion about race that has haunted us from the very beginning. Yeah, it's easy to talk about slavery, but it's not easy to discuss everything about it. And if it were taught in the schools, it would be much better, taught really the way it was. And that's why having a Black newspaper that, if it's doing its job, does not fail to share that information, to teach, to point us in the direction of those who know. That's what a Black newspaper is. And unless folks who are in power plan to repeal the right of free speech, Black newspapers are going to be here to stay as long as the community supports them, as long as we're able to get the required advertising, and as long as the institutions in the community support us. But we're like anything else. Without your support, we're gone. And God help us if we do not have Black newspapers on the front lines of reporting and telling the truth and making sure that our eyes are open to the information and the history that's important to us.
I just wanted to piggyback really quick on something.
Oh, for sure.
Ash said. I teach a unit on the Wilmington Massacre in my Black press class. And it was something I did not know about until I actually taught the class for the first time. And I remember several years back teaching this unit, my students who were mostly white, just being very angry and being felt that they had been lied to all of their lives because they did not learn these things that Governor DeSantis and others around the country are actually trying to remove from the curriculum and hide. So I just wanted to share that experience. They felt that they should have begun to learn these things like around middle school.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of challenges, of course, we know right now with all the different things that are going on in government, as well as, like you just mentioned, even with gun violence and so on, everything else that's happening. What challenges do you think that Black journalists, publishers really faced, and journalists and publishers faced then, and how many of those are challenges still remain today? Yeah.
Certainly, being funded, distribution, the turn of the 20th century, there were newspapers like the Chicago Defender that were banned in parts of the South because Robert Abbott and was encouraging African Americans to migrate to points north and west. And you had an economy that relied on their almost free labor that was losing it, that were very upset. And then also, I've read a book by Simeon Booker, who was the Washington bureau chief for Ebony and Jet from 1956 until 2007. And he discussed covering the Emmett Till murder and trial and how he and the photographer had to fly into Memphis and pretend that they were ministers because they could not go into Mississippi and cover that story. So those are just some of the early challenges people experience historically. When Ida B. Wells she actually had to leave Memphis when she was starting her anti-lynching campaign, and there are no known copies of her newspaper, the Memphis Free Speech and Headlight, that exist because this information was being disseminated. And you had people in the post-Reconstruction era, white people who did not want, this information to be distributed. And I even read someplace where Ida B. Wells had to go as far as to print her newspaper on a different color paper because the literacy rate was not, what it is now, certainly. And Black people would go to support her newspaper and they would be sold a different newspaper. These are some of the early historic challenges that journalists and newspaper publishers faced.
Cash, did you want to add any to that?
Certainly.
You also covered.
One of the challenges that we did face then is a challenge that we face now, and that is, again, that support, that community support, that advertising support. We being Black newspapers are the easiest targets in the world because someone can always pull the rug under us economically. We are always in a we're always struggling. We would, if you gave us enough money, we wouldn't know what to do with ourselves, because we're more used to operating without enough money. And so pulling rabbits out the hat is something that we do every week. And learning how to pay the bills and still pay payroll and do the things that are normal. Now, one could say that, yeah, a lot of businesses operate the same way. That's true. But when you're a Black newspaper and you are depended on by a community, and white businesses in particular are your primary source of information, and they decide they don't like what's on your front page, and so if they don't advertise in your paper because they feel that they can get the same business from Black people who read the general market newspaper or watch television, whatever else, well, then you have a problem. You have a challenge. If you because Black businesses, or I should say Black newspapers, are small businesses, they don't have the same amount of cash on hand as your larger newspapers. And so even though they try to offer payment terms that are more favorable, because they simply don't have the same kind of money, or don't or aren't able to get the same kind of contracts to publish advertising the way that their major market competitors have. That is a struggle. That is something that we have to deal with constantly. And our publishers historically have had to come up. I'll be frank with you. During the years where we were segregated, it was much easier to publish a Black newspaper, because the Black business community had to support us. They wanted to support us. The moment that integration became the law of the land, that's when things got to be very difficult for us. I'm not lamenting integration, but I'm just simply saying that you can understand how one area of existence is quite different from the other. So just existing, just getting the level of support. And I guess lastly, that piggybacks with that is helping young people to understand the importance of the Black press. Young people, until something happens, until a young person gets into trouble, and their family then comes looking around for help in the community, be it the church, be it whom or whatever else, and they come to the Black newspaper, and then they say, my child was arrested for X, Y, and Z, and will you kindly do a story on that, because we believe him to be innocent. There's no place else they can really turn for that kind of support in the community. And that's why it's so important for us to be there, because as much as we need the community needs us. We are a voice, not the voice, because you've got the Black church and you've got others, but we are certainly a voice. And we will jump into the fray faster than anybody else, because that's what we're there for. We are practiced at that. And, the challenges we face today are pretty much the same as they've always been, be it the civil rights movement, be it a situation with police brutality, be it Black men being arrested on false charges and are having to editorialize or investigate the situations Not a whole much has changed, and that's a shame to say in 2023 that a whole lot has not changed in terms of why you need the Black press.
I want to kind of
So-
piggyback on that because of what Deborah put in the chat, in the sense of that, how important it is to have Black press because of the ability to be an objective voice against the neutral press today. So can you speak a little bit more to that, the importance of the difference between the Black press and maybe the more well, I guess it's not really neutral. It's either right or left or in between kind of press that's out there. Like, how do you think, how important is it that we do have the Black press to represent our side of the stories in a way that is kind of our own vernacular too?
So Camille, could I jump in here? And also, is it possible to share? So because this is Black History Month, I guess I'll start with this. Malcolm's quote, if you can see my screen. The media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent. And that's power because they control the minds of the masses. And so we have to continue to control our media, but we do have a set of challenges that exist today. And I want to talk about some of those challenges that I actually have outlined here for you, specifically related to the Black press, but all press, but specifically related to the Black press. The conversion from print to digital has been slow. Black papers have suffered disproportionately, as Cash talked about, finding investors, advertisers, and subscribers. Our technology, getting the resources once again to, develop have the technology that we need to be able to push our content out to the masses. Obviously WordPress and SEO and ad server, different technologies that I just listed here, among other technologies that we use. And then we have other, let's talk about ad revenue. You need teams of staff to be able to work on setting up your ad server properly, getting programmatic ads, selling direct to customers or direct to advertisers. And this last piece is where I really want to focus on the most. Social media platforms, traditionally today, have benefited from sharing content from the Black press and other social media sites. As consumers, everybody here, we read a lot of content from our social media. And sometimes social media, basically your information never gets out, specifically the Black press. The social giants have benefited, as you can see from this data. They've collected, massive amounts of data from user profiles. But at the same time, there's a new challenge that the Black press faces. And that new challenge that the Black press faces is the algorithm, the social media algorithm, or the feed algorithm. Everybody here might have a LinkedIn account. You may have a Facebook account, a Twitter account. We are now competing with trying to actually get your content in a feed. No matter if you post your content in the Black press, if we post daily, if we post weekly, and you have, the capabilities to access social media to push your content out, now you're in a situation where you are dependent upon an algorithm from a technology company to decide whether your content should be visible to their users. And so now they have the power and they have the control to be able to shift to shift focus to specific articles, specific news stories that they've never had before. But they do that all with the power of an algorithm. And so for that, I say we have to be, that's one of our biggest challenges today, the Black press faces. And it's a situation where the only way to get around it, if you're going to stay in this realm working with these social media companies, unfortunately, is they have a button now. It's called Boost, where you actually have to pay them money to get your content in front of a lot more people's eyeballs. And so in addition to the algorithm, they figured we're going to make money off that. And so once again, our papers are struggling to generate the revenue. And on top of that, Now they have to spend even more money on technology, on the resources, and now they have to spend additional funding to be able to boost their content to get in front of you. And so that's a really serious problem that we have today.
Cary brought up a great point, and I think it's really important for us to talk about this even more because of in the day of misinformation running amok also on social media, and mentioning the algorithms and having to get your information pushed out and getting the right information pushed out. How has digital journalism affected or impacted the Black press?
I think Cary really outlined the first issue, and that's the really slow transition from print to digital. And as Cash mentioned earlier, just having the resources to make that happen has been one of the biggest challenges, I would say, to Black newspapers.
When you talk about slow transition, there are certain things that affected not just Black newspapers, but the publishing industry overall. A good example. And it's only recently that the newspaper industry has figured out how to effectively publish online and do so. I'm trying to make sure I say this accurately, so I'm not misunderstood. And the reason why I can talk with some authority with this is because we watched it happen because we were facing the same challenge. Newspapers for the longest time, and it took them years to figure out how to put advertising online and benefit from it to the extent where they can monetize and be able to effectively charge advertisers for what they were putting online. Let me give you a good example. You may remember years ago, I believe they've stopped this now, but you remember years ago where you'd be writing, or you'd be reading the Washington Post, and all of a sudden, this giant picture of a hockey player would come swooping in on what you were reading. And then right behind this hockey player, you would see an ad for the Washington, I forget whatever the team is there. Or there may be something else, a car dealership or something else. That was the newspaper's way of guaranteeing whoever that advertiser was that we can count. We know how many eyes will be seeing your ad. And thus we can charge you accordingly. That was they would interrupt what you were reading, rudely, I might add, for the sake of being able to say, we know how many people are looking at your ad right now, and so we can charge you for this accordingly. Prior to tricks like that, and there were other things that they did too that were annoying. Prior to that, they would put the ad on the page, but they couldn't count the eyeballs. And the problem with the web was that it's infinite. It's not like a hard copy where it's finite. You know, you have a broadsheet or you have a certain size page, and most people don't realize it, but in newspapers, what determines the number of pages that you have in a hard copy newspaper is your amount of advertising. You put the ads on the page first, with the exception of the front page, and then you fill in the blank spots with stories. That's the way that it generally is done. I say generally because now, particularly online, you are now finding, and TV stations are doing this too, you are now finding advertising that are doubling as news stories on the front page or the upper fold, if you want to call it, of a web page, be it a TV station or a newspaper, on the front page, that's something we almost never did before. We never put advertising on the front page before. Now today it's commonplace. This new generation is so used to seeing some kind of ad, and if you look underneath in fine print, it says sponsored by. That's because these folks have finally figured out ways to monetize what they're doing online, but it took them years to do that. So if it's taken the majors years to figure this out, imagine how, what that meant for us. It took us a while to go from black and white to color photography and color printing. It took us a while to do that. USA Today was the one responsible for forcing us to having to do that just to stay competitive. Because when people would see our hard copy newspapers as they walked down the street, and so we were this washed out black and white, and meanwhile USA Today was looking all sharp and color and everything was registered properly. We had to do something. We had to spend the money to be competitive, especially when the general market newspaper in our market followed suit. Then we were the only thing left at the newspaper corner in black and white. So we had to change to deal with that. But that took us a while. Then going online took us a while. So what's being talked about right now is going to take us a while. There are some black newspapers that are digitizing, but obviously not all. And again, it's all about support. It's all about finances. And the last point I want to make on this is the thinking. Most black newspapers are still run by folks who are in their 60s and 70s or 80s, should have retired. They're not run by young people. And so therefore, as far as they're concerned, the way we used to do it is the way we still should do it as far as they're concerned. And so when you get into this whole business about going online, about digitizing, et cetera, they don't know what you're talking about. All they know is that folks buy their damn paper, they put a quarter or 50 cents or $1 in the machine, they get it and they go on with life. That's the way they're still thinking. It's going to take a lot for them to change their way of thinking if they're still in business in order to go where they need to go to remain competitive. And that's just it.
Gregory Hedgepath asked, if funding has been a challenge for so long, what are unique ways we can start to address this? How do we build real sustainable revenue models and opportunities that allow us to scale and grow? I'll have that to Cary at first, and then Trevy, if you want to answer as well.
Greg, great question. Let me tell you how I'm actually doing it. And I want to just take a step back too, for the folks who are meeting me for the first time, just to let you know a little bit about how I even, started the Hayti app and my journey to be able to, as far as I'm concerned, to save the Black press. In May of 2020, I'm sitting at home and a news story came across the television screen that the grandson of the Carolina Times, Kenneth Edmonds, had passed away. And I said to myself, here we go. Another Black newspaper is going out of business. And, I have a background in business, in operations, and I had a tech company, a streaming channel that I was working on. And I said, you know what? During COVID, I had time. I was sitting at home like a lot of people, and I wanted to do something about it. And I said, I'm going to do something about it. And so I began development on a mobile app because we know, the majority of us get our news and our information from our devices. We check our phones, it's in our hand multiple times an hour. And so I started looking at it from the perspective of similar to cash. I mean, we're dealing with, legacy papers that's been around for a long time. They oftentimes don't have the resources and the technology to be able to do things, but I decided to reverse engineer the process. I realized their challenges. And I said, even though they have challenges, they still have content that I'd like to be able to tap into. I'd like to be able to read. And I know if I want to read it, I know others should be able to read it too. But through that process, and I'm going to get to your question too, through that process, I looked at Apple News. I looked at Google News. I looked at, news aggregators, Flipboard. And I was trying to find content from Black publishers. And oftentimes I would count 10, 20, maybe 30 tops. Black publishers on these platforms. And it wasn't until I went to social media and I had to go from site to site on social media, or, I had to go from website to website to be able to find this information. And so I've decided to create an aggregation app similar to Apple News or Google News that aggregates content exclusively from Black publishers or the Black press. And so today we have over 200 Black publishers on the platform. We have local Black newspapers across the nation, the Amsterdam News, Washington Informer, we've got Essence and the large publishers, but we've got, other bloggers as well. And this is a way for the first time that anybody, I say anybody, who's interested in our culture, our information, our news, not just us, but for the first time, Black journalists could get their message out without worrying about the feed, without worrying about showing up in somebody's feed or trying to show up in somebody's feed. You can get access to all of the news, all of your sports, your business, your finance, your entertainment, your politics, all of the information that comes from over 200 publishers. My technology goes out to their sites every 15 minutes. And if they publish something on their page, my technology grabs it and it puts it right in the app, accessible for everybody. Now, I make money, or the app makes money when people scroll, but the sole goal of the app is for you to read an article. Because when you read an article on the app, you don't stay inside the app, even though it looks like you are. I'm actually pushing you out to the publisher's page. That particular publisher has their own ads. They don't have to pay me a dime. And I don't want any money from them to promote. My sole goal is to ensure that these Black publishers are getting the mobile traffic to this amazing content that they're creating, and that they've never seen this traffic before. Why? Because they're not marketing to people. They don't have access to these mobile users. And so I have the power to do that. In addition to that, I send out push notifications. I have access to everybody's mobile phone who downloads my app. So if there's an article that's interesting that comes across my feed, that comes across the company's feed, we're going to push that article out. And we tend to push out, 2 to 3 articles a day. We try not to overwhelm our mobile users, but it just reinforces that message to our mobile users. Here's an article that you should be interested in. And when they come back to the app, they might come back for that article, but at the same time, they might come back for other articles from other publishers that they've never heard of before. For the first time, they're looking at information that they've never seen on social media, because oftentimes they're getting content from major, large corporations and media companies. And so now they have the opportunity to do that. And so that sets the stage for revenue, to drive revenue for, publishers, local as well as national Black publishers, for the first time to be able to drive that revenue to them. And so that's my goal, and why the reason why I actually created the HETA app.
The next question, I feel like this is a Trevy one. With misinformation happening, how are you addressing the development of deep fakes? Are you also beginning to address metahumans that will be able to perform some of these functions of not only on-air talent, but even we are seeing it now with print, with ChatGPT and all the other things as well? I feel like Trevy, maybe you would know some of this just from having the access of UNC's budget and on so on, maybe having even more information you could share with the rest of us about that.
Wow, that's a really, really big question. And I don't have like all of the answers, of course. I think we will always need content creators. And it's, just important, I think, just from my perspective of training students for careers in both journalism and strategic communicators. We're going to need, people to create that content. And while ChatGPT, which I have not experimented yet, can do some things, it does not replace that touch of a person. And one of the things that I just really focus on in training my students is training them to use the concept of excellent journalism, looking at things like context, complexity, voices, authenticity, and proportionality in their writing and in their coverage.
Yeah, I figured you might have some access to that because I didn't know if it was an issue with people writing papers. They were talking about you can pass
It's
the
so
MBA
brand
with a
new,
B.
and we have been
Yeah.
like having workshops around campus for faculty to figure out what to do about this new technology. But I'm not well versed on that just yet.
Just as important as being critically important in the black community to know what's going on and be a support to the community over issues like police brutality, Black men unjustly arrested. How would you assess the role of Black press has in being stewards of democracy, especially with folk like DeSantis making it illegal to talk about Black history? Actually, Cash, I haven't heard from you in a while. Do you mind taking this one?
Two things. I want to say something really quick to Cary, and then I'll answer your question. One of the difficulties in reimagining publishing week to week Black newspapers is the fact that we are still fashioning ourselves on the old model. The old model being that we put out a hard copy newspaper every Thursday, and then everything else falls behind that. Why Thursday? Because back in the old days and even today, your supermarkets came out with your sales, your new sales, your weekly sales on a Thursday, and most people back in the day purchased a Black newspaper to get the sales from the supermarkets that were put in the paper in order to do their shopping. And so we are still on that model. And so, Cary, when I hear you talk about, getting content from all the newspapers, with a lot of us, our new content really doesn't come out until Thursday. Between that time, and as a matter of fact, there are a lot of newspapers that I know who will not go online to publish an online version of what they put in their Thursday paper until after their Thursday newspaper has hit the street, which means that a lot of their stories will not hit online until maybe the weekend, perhaps, and as they get in preparation for their next paper. So that's something that needs to change. We do not think in terms of, this is news that needs to be put online now or needs to be made available now. We think in terms of this is a news story for our Thursday paper. That needs to change in order for that relationship that is needed to get more content out. So I strongly suggest that the North Carolina Black Publishers Association and you or whoever you would recommend somehow get together and talk about changing the model. So this way, then our content can be more readily available, and we get out of the Thursday business. And if the publishers see where they can generate revenue by doing so, then hopefully they will do so.
There's one question that Beverly Mahone put in the chat to Trevy. What do you say to white journalism students about covering stories about people of color? Is that a conversation that needs to be had?
That is absolutely a conversation that needs to be had. I teach a whole course in like cultural competency and developing cultural competency and being able to cover different communities. And, for me, it just comes back to some principles about like making sure you sharpen your language, making sure that you humanize the subjects and you're not writing about them, but like letting their voices speak and letting their voices tell the story. But this is something that we in the journalism school are actually trying to implement as a required course, because that does, raise concern when you have people who are continually objectified in the media. So this is something that we are certainly working on, as well as other journalism schools around the country.
Deborah asked for Cash, then Trevy, then Cary, how can the organization like NABJ-RDU make the greatest impact on support for Black newspapers and Black-owned media?
People who has been with the Triangle branch of NABJ, if not as an actual member, then certainly as a supporter since the beginning. So I remember the very beginnings of this, and one of the things that I'm very pleased with is that, and Pam knows what I'm talking about. And one of the things that I'm very pleased with is that you guys have always been there, and I think that you can't solve our problems, but at least being there to understand what we in Black media have to go through to keep the doors open and the lights on, and also to respect us, because there can be a lot of times where this old question comes up, and it's an insulting question, but it's a question nonetheless. That if you're a reporter that works in African American newspapers, are you as good as reporters who work in general market media, be they newspapers or television stations? Another insulting question is, if you work at a general market newspaper or television station, are you a reporter who just happens to be Black, or are you a Black reporter? And we go through these all kinds of conniptions. I think we put those questions to bed some time ago, particularly when it comes to African American media, in that because many of us started in Black media and then made the transition over to general market, and then some of us decided, no, we're going to stay because our community needs the service. And so it was the respect that needed to be ironed out years ago, that we are doing an important job and we have an important function. And as long as we have the respect of our colleagues as to what we're doing, and I've certainly experienced that over the course of my career, then I think you're doing your job. Our job is to serve the community, and then hopefully we will continue to try to get the support that is necessary to stay in business. There have been times over the years where if I come across a story that a colleague of mine feels is important at a general market newspaper or a television station, and they will take it to their folks and they'll put it on the air or something like that. If it's something that is worthy of wider coverage, sometimes that happens. But just knowing that we're there, knowing that we're there for a reason, knowing that we're not there for the money, that is absent. Cross that reason off your list. We are not working at a Black newspaper for the money. We are doing it because we believe in what we're doing. And I think that's the answer. Just give us the respect. We give you the respect. We know that you catch hell in your respective shops. I know in the old days you did, that's for sure. I don't know about what's happening now. And let's, continue to serve the community as best as we possibly can in both our areas of importance.
So I was going to just jump in and say that I'm a new member to NABJ, but I will tell you that I've known about NABJ for many years. And I will say that, just as a collective, we have to work together. I joined NABJ because I can't do this by myself. I need help. I need a team. I need advisors. I need mentors. I need expertise. I need, assistance from people who basically are NABJ members, both locally here in RDU as well as nationally. And I think that the problems that we face and the challenges that we, are ahead are, they're big challenges. And so I'm not looking to do this alone. And so I'm looking to work within, or work with other team members and NABJ members specifically to solve some of these problems. And so having events like this and just, having, like I said, the mentorship to be able to assist me through that process. I know that not only for me, but also I think about the future. I think about these kids coming out of college or in college right now who are kind of trying to find their way. And so, this is an opportunity for them to get on the ground floor with NABJ-RDU specifically to learn and navigate, their future. And so that's why I joined. And I know that this has already been a success for me, even though I've just joined. The connections that I've already started to make and things that have already begin to happen as a result, I'm happy with. And I know that this is only going to move forward. Cash, I do want to just tell you, I know we'll probably talk offline, but thank you for letting me know about the Thursday situation, holding back on Thursdays. And I often do that too, because the Amsterdam news didn't come out. New York Amsterdam news came out every Thursday. I didn't realize it was across the board for a lot of different Black press papers. And so, but I do want to have a conversation about that a little bit further. And I know we'll have the opportunity after this. Thank you.
Sure.
What both Cash and Cary said, just really continuing to support these organizations. I recall a time several years ago when we had a meeting with Kenneth Edmonds for back then we were TABJ. So, and then also reaching out to our younger members and to our college students to get them involved. They have a wealth of knowledge and skills that we may not have as well at our ages and with regards to technology. So reaching out and forming maybe a mentorship program with some of our students at our HBCUs and our predominantly white institutions with Black newspapers.
And on that note, we're going to bring this all to a close, but I just want to make sure if you
UNC email address into the chat.
I put my email as well in the chat. I'll put my email as well on my cell phone. Anybody who is interested in contacting me as well. I just want to thank you today. This has actually been very informative, and I actually was able to pull out a lot of information. And so thank you for actually having me as a guest today.
And then Cash, did you want to add anything or make sure everybody knows to come to your screening tomorrow for sure?
Yeah, tomorrow at am I on? Okay. Tomorrow 11 a.m. at Lincoln Park Holiness Church, which is 13 Heath Street in Raleigh, Southeast Raleigh. My film, Lincoln Park Holiness Church, from the Sin of Slavery to Winning Souls for Christ will premiere. Oh, I left out the most important part for some people. After the film, of course, the film is free. We're not charging you. After the film, we serve you dinner for free. We're going to feed you for free. That is something the pastor decided he wanted to do for folks who were kind enough to come out and see the film. And so after the film, we will all have dinner. They have a wide downstairs area where they're able to do that. And so after the film, then you stay, and then we feed you. You don't have to worry about spending your money someplace else. And so it's an exciting day. It's an unusual film for me in an unusual circumstance, but I'm so happy and so grateful that it is something that I can be proud of for sure, and that I know that will benefit a lot of people. And even more importantly, that I'm telling the story of a specific institution in the community that is feeding over 1,000 people a month through their food distribution program, that is supportive of Black businesses. It's a property owner in the immediate area and revitalizing that area there, that is purchasing properties so people can have affordable housing, that has the Debenham Clinic there. That is a part of that whole revitalization effort as well. And so it's not just a story about the Black history of that church, but also what they're doing today. And every time you hear people complain about a Black church, there's also, what are they doing in the community? Yeah, well, come try to say that about Lincoln Park Holiness Church after you see my film tomorrow, and then you'll realize that you cannot say that about them. They are doing the work, and I'm very, very glad to tell their story.
May I ask, if a person is not in the area, might there be other opportunities to see the film?
They will be putting the film online. I know Pastor wants to do that. Now that I've finished the film and it's out of my control, all of that is his decision. But I knew, though, that's something that he wants to do because he realizes that the film is an important ambassador for the church, its history, and its work to attract more people to the church. So the answer is yes. I don't have that information ready, but I'm pretty sure after tomorrow he will put it out there that the film is being put online, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, he's giving it a dedicated website, and also we had extras footage as far as the history of the church is concerned, or the history of his family, I should say, that we're also putting online. And so all of that's going to be online within the next couple of weeks. And that, therefore, the answer is yes, it will be available online pretty soon.
Great, thank you.
Okay, on that note, I'm going to stop recording.